Dead Space is back with a remake of the beloved 2008 original currently in production. And while the series has remained dormant for years, the developers at EA Motive are hoping to bring the nightmares of Isaac's journey aboard the Ishimura back to life, using the latest console technology to create a stunning new take on the adventure. Ahead of its reveal, IGN spoke to two leads on the project about why the team chose to remake the original, how they're staying faithful to that visceral classic while injecting some new life into it, and the team's unique approach to involving fans in the game's development.
The foundation on which we're starting is that we are rebuilding completely the game, but in Frostbite, in the new engine. So the original game was made in a really old engine. So we have all the original assets. So for example, as level design, the foundation currently of the game on which now we're iterating, we started with the original level design collisions of the original Dead Space. And what's funny in that actually is that you can see also some of the iterations that were made prior to ship by the team. Like in the first chapter, you can see some corridors that they wanted to do first in a certain way, and then you can understand why they change it for technical constraint or other things. So we also have that type of history in the data that is really interesting. But then in terms of visual, sound, gameplay, everything, we are rebuilding all of those assets. We are not porting them. It's not appraising the texture or adding more faces, more polygons to the model. It's really rebuilding all those elements, shooting all the animations, etc. And then there are a couple of elements on which we want to iterate and try to add improvements to it. Whether it's on the horror, on the immersion, or even on the gameplay, there are elements that we don't want to change the experience. We really want to stay true to that experience, and that's why we've started to work with some passionate people in the community to make sure that we still nail that experience, that it's Dead Space.
Jesus! Open fire! Open fire! Sender! Power! Sender! Come on! Got it! Isaac! Get the hell out of there!
But then, with stuff like with the really fast SSDs that we have currently with the new generation, okay, there's probably really interesting things that we can do in terms of creating a more immersive Ishimura, or other elements like, for example, taking inspiration in what comes after what they did, let's say on Dead Space 2 with the zero gravity and how you move around in zero gravity compared to Dead Space 1. That's definitely something that is really interesting to us and that we're playing with, and that's how we are approaching changes to the original, is through the lens of those improvements we want to make.
Well, clearly, next generations of console enable us to have ray trace reflection, volumetric effects, or even fluid simulation for these effects. 3D audio with understanding where the sound comes from, having the right propagation in the corridors, making it come from the vents above you or behind you. These are all things that we'll be able to expand on to increase, again, on the level of immersion and make sure that, like Roman said, the Ishimura is alive. It's dying, but it's still alive, and it has a voice. And throughout your journey over the chapters of the game, you hear it progress. And that's the type of evolution that we want to make sure that the players notice when they play the game.
One thing for me that is really iconic of Dead Space, it's often, at least at the beginning of the game when they're playing a little bit with your senses, you get that whisper in your ear that is constant. And that's pretty creepy and scary in the game. That now imagine with the current 3D audio technologies, how you will be constantly like, what the, it's that.
Isaac, it's me. I wish I could talk to you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about everything.
Everything that you're gonna see in the world, every UI element, every HUD, everything is diegetic, and it's presented from the perspective of Isaac. We want to make that immersion even deeper with a fully uninterrupted experience from the start screen to the end credits. We don't want anything to pull you out of the experience, and we don't want any cut. And so that's something that we're using. Like when I was speaking about faster SSDs and this kind of thing, there's not gonna be any loading. There's not gonna be any moment where we're gonna cut your experience, where we're gonna cut your camera. You can play it from the start screen to the end credits seamlessly.
As an objective that we gave early on to everyone, what we're trying to achieve is a level of immersion where you never want to put your controller down. Like Dead Space is not a 60, 100-hour game. Like ideal scenario, you don't actually want to get up to go to the bathroom because you're so immersed within the universe, and you want to play it through in one sit down.
For us, what is important, the foundation is it's Dead Space 1 story. So by default, that's what is canon. But then there are some improvements that we want to make to that story, and not necessarily improvements because those things were not really working in the original. More improvements because of what came after, and we're like, oh man, that's interesting if we could be referencing that, or if we could make a link to that doesn't feel like they tried to retrofit it afterward.
So we're doing it from a narrative standpoint, but we're also looking at it from a feature standpoint and the improvements and some of the content that evolved throughout the franchise. So we're looking at what can be taken and like re-injected within the first game from a feature standpoint. We're also learning from mistakes such as microtransactions, which we will not have, for instance, in our game.
On the combat, well, of course, with the new technologies that we have, we will make the dismemberment evolve a little bit, not only to make it more gory, but maybe to have some kind of evolved mechanics around it. But does it still feel like Dead Space? Does the combat feel tense like Dead Space? Do you still feel like every round counts when you're getting to after a couple of hours of the game, this kind of thing?
For us, we don't want to be in siloed and create our own bubble of the game we're making. So from the conception, we've linked, we've reached out to members of the community to create a community council to be some sort of sounding board for what we were making sure that if we're deciding to make a change, we want to be able to explain it and get told if, like, no, what are you doing? What are you thinking? You're actually breaking the game. Why are you changing this? And we've received some extremely valid feedback from that group. We're trying to meet with them on a every 2-3 weeks basis to show them content and have that ongoing discussion. And they've had access, unfiltered access to what we're making from a very early point in production, which is I think something that was never done at EA, was making some people uncomfortable at first, making us uncomfortable, but that's proven extremely valuable. And I think that for a game like us, which is a lot of people consider it a cult classic, I surely do, remaking it, we can't break it. So we need to make sure that we have that conscious that works with us, that gives us those cues when we're playing with something and like, oh, you know what, maybe be careful about this for XYZ reason.
You can't stand in the way of God's plan, the natural order.
What's really cool, it's first you discover things that otherwise you might have discovered reading Reddit 2 weeks after launching the game, and you're like, oh man, I wish I knew that. So that's super useful, but also it's really energizing for the team and for the people and even for us, because when you show something and you get feedback and good reactions on what you're doing, it gives you that energy to go like, man, okay, that's cool. Let's keep pushing that. What we are remaking, we are remaking a survival horror classic game. And that's something that is really important for us. And that's also why we're working with the community on this one.
So much of the original Dead Space was on the highs and lows, managing that curve of tension, managing like I'm not sure I want to turn that corner because I don't know what's going to happen, and those surprises. So that's something that, as a message to the team and a focus for our group, is essential. Making sure that we get the right pacing to avoid going too much in a direction of action and get that scavenger loop and that slow pace. I need to make sure that every bullet counts when I play.
I've always been a fan of that genre, and I'm also a big fan of sci-fi, and that's why I really loved Dead Space. It's because it adds that unique mix of sci-fi, horror, gore, etc. And I was like really sucked into it. And I've never had before the opportunity to work on a survival horror game. And when I had the discussion with the people at Motive, they had me with 2 words: Dead Space. I was like, yes, no, stop. You can stop here. I mean, whatever. I want to be there.
It's really kind of a love letter to fans that we want to write with this game, and we're part of those fans. So the passion that we have in making it, I hope it translates into the results of what we're seeing now and all the things that we'll be showing in the future.
There's plenty more to learn about the Dead Space remake, so be sure to head over to IGN for even more from Phil and Roman on the remake's creation, and be sure to check out the full revealed trailer. And for everything else happening aboard the Ishimura, you're already in the right place, IGN.